The morning sun cast long shadows across the neatly trimmed lawn of the suburban Virginia home. Robert Mitchell stood on his porch, steam rising from the coffee mug clutched in his weathered hand. At 68, his posture remained military straight, a habit drilled into him through 30 years of service. The neighbors called him Steel Bob behind his back, a nickname that had followed him from his days commanding an M1 Abrams tank during Operation Desert Storm. Today would be like most days since his retirement from active duty. In his converted garage studio, he would record another episode for his YouTube channel, American Steel Truth. 500,000 subscribers tuned in weekly for his military analysis, delivered with the straightforward precision that had characterized his leadership style in the field. He sipped his coffee, black and bitter, while surveying his quiet street. The American flag on his porch fluttered in the gentle breeze. Most of the neighbors were still asleep. Robert had been awake since 0500 hours, an old habit he never bothered to break. The nightmares made sure of that, flashes of sand and fire that still visited him 3 decades after Desert Storm and 20 years after his second tour in Iraq. Another day serving the truth, he murmured to himself, a daily affirmation that had replaced the military oaths of his past. Inside his home, framed metals caught the morning light. The Bronze Star for valor during the 73 Easting engagement, where his tank platoon had outmaneuvered the Republican Guard. The Purple Heart from the IED that nearly took his life outside Fallujah in 2003. Memories preserved behind glass, reminders of the cost of freedom and the responsibility that came with survival. Robert finished his coffee and walked toward his garage studio. The space had been transformed with professional lighting, sound-dampening panels, and enough computing power to render complex military simulations. A far cry from the analog world of his early tank commander days, but he had adapted. Adaptation was survival, a lesson learned in the crucible of combat. The morning schedule was already set. Final preparations for this week's video analysis of next-generation anti-tank weapon systems. His viewers, many of them fellow veterans or active duty personnel, appreciated his technical expertise and unflinching honesty. He had no corporate sponsors to please, no political agenda to push. Just the truth as he saw it, through the eyes of experience. Robert settled into his ergonomic chair, donated by a viewer who worried about the old soldier's back problems. He booted up his system and checked his email before starting the recording, a routine that provided structure to his post-military life. The email notification dinged. Subject line, Bradley footage you need to see. His index finger hovered over the trackpad. Anonymous sender. Robert's instincts, honed by years of identifying threats before they materialized, caused a familiar tightness in his chest. He clicked. The message was brief. Captain Mitchell, I served under Colonel Ramirez in the 3rd Infantry. What they're saying about this Bradley is wrong. I know you'll see what I see. Attached was a video file and several still images. Robert's eyes narrowed as he downloaded and opened the file. The video showed Russian soldiers standing around what appeared to be an abandoned and damaged Bradley infantry fighting vehicle. Their body language conveyed triumph as one soldier spoke directly to the camera in Russian. We are about to tow this American gift away, the caption translated. Robert leaned forward, his trained eye catching details others might miss. The Bradley's position, the specific damage pattern, the surrounding terrain, the quality of light. He had commanded tanks, not Bradleys, but every tank commander knew armored vehicles intimately. They were not just machines, they were lifelines. Something's not right, he whispered. He played the video again and again, each viewing revealing inconsistencies. The Russians claimed this was recent footage, evidence of a captured American vehicle, but several elements contradicted this narrative. The Bradley's reactive armor configuration was outdated by at least 6 months. The camouflage pattern didn't match the latest deployment images. And most telling, the specific damage to the right track assembly would have made towing nearly impossible without specialized equipment not visible in the footage. Robert's mind clicked it into the analytical process that had kept his men alive in combat. Question assumptions. Verify independently. Trust patterns over words. He pulled up the latest intelligence briefings available through his military analyst contacts. The official report claimed 3 Bradleys had been lost in recent fighting, with 2 confirmed destroyed and 1 listed as status unknown. This could potentially be that 3rd vehicle. Yet something in his gut told him this was wrong. The same instinct that had made him order his platoon to change positions seconds before an artillery strike would have annihilated them in the Iraqi desert. Robert reached for his phone and dialed a number few people had access to. "Doc, it's Mitchell. I need your eyes on something." James "Doc" Thompson had been the finest tank technician in the regiment, able to diagnose mechanical issues by sound alone. Now retired and running a restoration business for vintage military vehicles, his expertise remained undiminished. "Send it over, Captain," Doc replied, never breaking the habit of addressing Robert by his rank despite the decades of civilian life between them. Robert forwarded the video, then made another call. "Sarah, I have something that needs your special touch." Sarah Miller wasn't just the daughter of his fallen comrade. She was an FBI image analysis expert who had helped him verify footage on previous occasions. Her father, Lieutenant David Miller, had died saving Robert's life outside Baghdad. Supporting Sarah's education had been Robert's way of honoring that sacrifice. With the initial inquiries in motion, Robert turned back to his computer and began researching recent Bradley deployments. His living room wall map was soon covered with printed images, official reports, and technical specifications, connected by red string in a pattern that would have appeared chaotic to an outsider. To Robert, it was order emerging from chaos. By mid-afternoon, Doc called back. "Captain, that Bradley has problems they aren't showing you. The right suspension is completely shot. Look at the torsion bars visible in frame 27. They couldn't tow that vehicle with anything less than an M88 recovery vehicle." "And did you see any M88 in the footage?" Robert asked, already knowing the answer. "Negative. They've got a standard truck with a winch. That would just damage it further." Robert thanked him and made notes. The puzzle pieces weren't fitting with the official narrative. Sarah's response came an hour later, her voice carrying the crisp precision of her professional analysis. "The video has been edited, Uncle Bob. Light angles don't match between sequences. There's at least a 6-hour time difference between the opening shots and the soldier standing by the vehicle. And the geolocation metadata doesn't match the claimed position by about 3 kilometers. So they're selling us a story," Robert concluded. "Looks that way. And there's something else. The same digital fingerprint, a specific compression algorithm, matches footage claiming to show an abandoned Leopard 2A6 from 3 weeks ago." Robert leaned back in his chair, feeling the familiar weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. This wasn't just about one vehicle. This was about information warfare, about narratives that shape policy decisions and public opinion, about the truth. He thought of the young men and women currently manning those Bradleys on the front lines. They deserve better than to have their vehicles used as propaganda pieces. The sun was setting as Robert began preparing his response video. He set up his professional camera, adjusted the lighting, and arranged the verified information in a logical sequence. Behind him on the wall hung the American flag that had draped his father's coffin, a World War II veteran who had instilled in him the values that defined his life: honesty, courage, and duty. This is Robert Mitchell, former captain, 2nd Armored Division. Today we're examining recent claims about a captured Bradley infantry fighting vehicle. The truth matters, especially when it concerns our deployed equipment and the men and women who operate it. His voice, deep and resonant with the authority of experience, filled the studio as he methodically deconstructed the false narrative. He presented evidence without hyperbole or political spin, allowing viewers to follow his analytical process. The video would be 20 minutes long, concise by his standards, focused entirely on the technical and visual evidence. As he finished recording, his phone rang again. The caller ID showed a Washington area code he didn't recognize. "Mitchell," he answered, military brevity never quite leaving his communication style. "Captain Mitchell, this is Senator Howard's office. The senator saw your analysis of the Javelin system last month. He's concerned about some intelligence reports crossing his desk regarding vehicle losses. Would you be available for a private consultation?" Robert paused. His channel had garnered attention in military and political circles, but direct contact from a Senate Armed Services Committee member was unprecedented. "I can make myself available," he replied carefully, "but I should tell you I'm currently investigating some inconsistencies in recently released Bradley footage." The aide's voice changed subtly. "Actually, that's precisely why the senator wants to speak with you. He's seeing conflicting reports. Tomorrow, 1400 hours at his district office." After confirming the details, Robert hung up and stared at the wall of evidence he'd assembled. The stakes had just been raised. Whatever was happening with this Bradley story, it had attracted attention at the highest levels. He should have felt validation. Instead, a familiar tension settled between his shoulder blades, the same sensation he'd experienced when leading his tank through potentially mined territories. The field had changed, but the battle for truth remained just as treacherous. That night, Robert dreamed of Desert Storm again. The night vision green landscape, the radio chatter, the heavy metal monster responding to his commands as they pushed forward into enemy territory. In the dream, as in reality 30 years prior, his gunner spotted the enemy tank before it could target them. Robert had given the order to fire, watching through his periscope as the depleted uranium round found its mark. But in the dream, the destroyed tank contained not enemy soldiers but truth itself, burning in the desert night. He awoke at 0300, sweating despite the cool air from his ceiling fan. Sleep wouldn't return. Robert made coffee and returned to his evidence wall, staring at the images as dawn slowly lightened the sky outside. This was just one Bradley, one video. But his instincts told him there was something larger at play. By morning, his video analysis was uploaded and immediately began attracting attention. Veterans and active duty personnel commented with their own observations, many confirming his technical assessments. Military bloggers picked up the story, amplifying his methodical debunking. Robert was preparing for his meeting with Senator Howard when Sarah called again. "Uncle Bob, I found something while running deeper analysis on those video files. The original footage appears to have been shot nearly 2 weeks ago, not 3 days ago as claimed." Robert absorbed this information, adding it to his mental map of the situation. "That changes the entire timeline they're pushing. Can you document your findings?" "Already did. Sending it now." Robert thanked her and checked the time. He needed to leave for the senator's office soon, but first, he made one more call. "Mike, I need your network." Mike Daniels had been the best scout in the regiment, his situational awareness nearly supernatural. After retiring, he had built an extensive information network spanning military and intelligence communities. "What are we hunting, Captain?" Mike's voice carried the same quiet intensity Robert remembered from their deployment days. "The truth about a Bradley that supposedly was captured recently. I'm seeing evidence of information manipulation. Wouldn't be the first time. Give me what you have, and I'll put out some feelers. Still got friends in satellite intelligence who owe me favors." With Mike activated, Robert felt the familiar comfort of having competent people covering his flanks. He dressed in his meeting attire, a tailored navy suit with subtle pinstripes, his regimental tie, and the small American flag pin on his lapel. His appearance was deliberately conservative, projecting reliability and tradition rather than flash. The drive to Senator Howard's district office took 45 minutes. Robert used the time to mentally organize his findings, preparing to present them with the same precision he'd once used for mission briefings. The meeting location was a nondescript office building in Arlington, with understated security that Robert's trained eye nonetheless cataloged automatically. Senator James Howard was in his third term, a moderate Republican with a military background who had earned respect across the aisle for his principled approach to defense issues. His office walls displayed photos with troops in Afghanistan and Iraq, unit flags, and military memorabilia that spoke of genuine connection rather than political theater. "Captain Mitchell," Howard greeted him with a firm handshake. At 60, the senator was younger than Robert, but they shared the bond of men who had made difficult decisions with lives hanging in the balance. "I appreciate you coming on short notice." "Happy to help, Senator." They settled into comfortable leather chairs in Howard's private office, an aide bringing coffee before discreetly withdrawing. "I'll get straight to the point," Howard said, leaning forward. "Your analysis of defense systems has been more accurate than some of the briefings I get from official channels. Yesterday, the Pentagon reported 5 Bradleys lost last week. Then this Russian footage emerges, claiming capture of an intact vehicle. Now my committee needs to make decisions about the next aid package, and I'm getting conflicting information about equipment effectiveness and losses." Robert nodded, understanding the implications. Military aid decisions involve billions of dollars and potentially affected battlefield outcomes. "Senator, I believe there's deliberate information manipulation happening. The video showing the allegedly captured Bradley contains multiple technical inconsistencies. More importantly, forensic analysis suggests the footage is nearly 2 weeks old, not 3 days as claimed." He presented his evidence methodically, including Sarah's technical analysis and Doc's assessment of the vehicle's condition. Howard listened without interruption, occasionally making notes. When Robert finished, the senator sat back in his chair. "This aligns with some intelligence whispers I've been hearing. There's concern about a coordinated disinformation campaign targeting specific weapon systems that had been particularly effective. The question is, who benefits from exaggerating equipment losses? Robert asked. Howard's expression darkened. Multiple parties, defense contractors pushing newer systems, foreign interests wanting to reduce support, domestic political elements looking to score points. The truth gets stretched from all directions. The conversation continued for over an hour, delving into specific technical details that most politicians would have glazed over. But Howard's military background made him an informed audience, capable of understanding both the technical and strategic implications. As their meeting concluded, Howard made an unexpected request. Captain, would you be willing to brief several members of my committee next week? Off the record, of course. We need unfiltered analysis before making certain decisions. Robert hesitated only briefly. This would take his YouTube analysis into the realm of policy influence, something he had deliberately avoided. But the stakes justified the exception. Yes, sir, I can do that. Howard nodded appreciatively. Thank you. My aide will contact you with the details. And Mitchell, watch your six. When you start poking at narratives, sometimes they poke back. The warning wasn't delivered dramatically, but Robert recognized the seriousness behind it. He left the meeting with a new perspective on how his technical analysis might fit into larger geopolitical games. Driving home, Robert mentally cataloged the players who might have motives to manipulate the Bradley narrative. Defense contractors seeking to discredit current systems in favor of newer, more expensive replacements. Foreign intelligence services working to reduce Western military support. Political operatives looking to undermine current policies. The complexity reminded him of multi-party conflicts where identifying friend from foe became increasingly difficult. But complexity had never deterred him before. Back at his home studio, Robert found his video had already garnered over 150,000 views in just 5 hours, with engagement metrics suggesting it was being shared among military communities worldwide. The comment section was filled with technical discussions, additional observations, and veterans weighing in with their own expertise. He also had several new emails from international military analysts requesting his data. Robert vetted each one carefully before responding, conscious that information sharing was itself a strategic choice. His phone rang just as he was organizing his notes from the senator's meeting. Mitchell, Captain, it's Mike. My satellite contact came through. I have eyes on the location where that Bradley was supposedly filmed. Robert straightened in his chair. What do you see? That's the interesting part. There is indeed a damaged Bradley at those coordinates. But here's the kicker, it hasn't moved in 10 days based on daily satellite passes. And there's no evidence of recovery vehicles in the vicinity. This confirmation sent a surge of validation through Robert's system. His instincts had been correct. Send me what you can. Already on the way. Encrypted file, same password as last time. Within minutes, Robert was examining satellite imagery showing the Bradley in question, clearly identifiable by its distinctive damage pattern. The images, time-stamped across multiple days, showed the vehicle remaining stationary, contradicting claims of its capture and removal. As Robert added this new evidence to his wall, a notification appeared on his computer. Someone had mentioned his channel on a major news network. He pulled up the clip. Former tank commander turned YouTube analyst Robert Mitchell has raised significant questions about recently released footage, the anchor was saying. Mitchell claims technical inconsistencies suggest the video may be misleading. The segment continued with a defense analyst dismissing his findings. These internet sleuths often lack the full intelligence picture. The Pentagon has confirmed vehicle losses, and we should be focused on supporting our allies rather than nitpicking propaganda videos. Robert snorted at this characterization. 30 years in armored warfare reduced to internet sleuth. But the dismissal didn't bother him. The truth didn't require universal acceptance to remain the truth. He began preparing his follow-up video, incorporating the satellite imagery with proper security precautions to protect his source. His phone continued to buzz with notifications as his original video gained traction, spreading through military forums and news aggregators. By evening, he had completed his script and was setting up to record when his doorbell rang. Unusual for this time of day, Robert approached cautiously, checking through the side window before opening the door. A woman in her 30s stood on his porch, dressed in business casual attire with a press badge hanging around her neck. Captain Mitchell, Rebecca Chen from the Washington Post. I'd like to discuss your Bradley video analysis. Robert's expression remained neutral. I wasn't expecting press coverage. That's often when the best stories emerge, she replied with a slight smile. May I come in? What you've uncovered may be part of a larger pattern we've been investigating. After a moment's consideration, Robert opened the door wider. 20 minutes, Miss Chen. I have a recording scheduled. As she entered, Robert noticed a sedan parked across the street, two men visible in the front seats. Probably her crew, but his situational awareness flagged it nonetheless. Thank you, she said, taking the offered seat in his living room, her eyes briefly scanning the evidence wall. Impressive analysis setup. Old habits, he replied simply. How did the Post become interested in Russian propaganda videos? We're not interested in just the videos, Rebecca clarified, removing a tablet from her bag. We're interested in patterns of disinformation specifically targeting Western military equipment. Your technical breakdown caught our attention because it matches other cases we've documented. She showed him a spreadsheet tracking similar incidents involving different equipment types. Javelin missile systems, HIMARS rocket launchers, and now Bradleys. In each case, videos purporting to show captured or destroyed systems contain verifiable technical inconsistencies. This isn't random, she continued. Our analysis suggests a coordinated campaign to influence both public opinion and policy decisions regarding military support. Robert studied the data, his tactical mind recognizing the pattern. Information warfare. Exactly. And it appears to be working. Public support for military aid has decreased 7 percentage points in the last month alone. For the next 15 minutes, they compared notes, Robert sharing his technical analysis while Rebecca provided broader media context. Her knowledge impressed him, lacking the superficial understanding common among journalists covering military matters. As their conversation concluded, Rebecca made an unexpected revelation. Captain, there's something you should know. Before coming to the Post, I worked in intelligence analysis. Some of my former colleagues share your concerns about this Bradley footage. Not everyone in the official channels is buying the narrative being pushed. This confirmed Robert's suspicion that internal disagreements existed within intelligence communities. The truth was being contested even among those with classified access. After Rebecca left, Robert watched the sedan pull away, memorizing its license plate out of ingrained caution. Then he returned to his studio, mind processing this new dimension to his investigation. The recording went smoothly, his decades of mission briefings translating well to video presentation. He laid out the satellite evidence, carefully framed to protect sources, along with additional technical analysis of the Bradley's condition. Based on multiple lines of evidence, this vehicle has not been moved from its position in at least 10 days, he concluded. The claim that it was recently captured is demonstrably false. The question we should all be asking is, why create this false narrative, and who benefits from it? He uploaded the video and prepared for the reaction. It wouldn't be long coming. Within an hour, his subscriber count had jumped by several thousand. The video was being shared across platforms, including by several verified military accounts. Comments poured in, many from active duty personnel expressing appreciation for the technical accuracy of his assessment. But not all reactions were positive. A coordinated wave of negative comments appeared, using suspiciously similar language questioning his patriotism and expertise. Several tech-savvy viewers noted these appeared to be bot accounts, further suggesting an organized response to his revelations. Robert took it in stride. He had faced far worse than keyboard warriors. His phone rang again. Doc Thompson. Captain, you've stirred up the hornet's nest. My contacts at the maintenance depot are saying there's pressure from above to confirm higher equipment loss numbers. Political pressure? Unclear. But someone wants the narrative to be, we need newer equipment because current systems are vulnerable. Robert made notes. The picture was becoming clearer, though still incomplete. As midnight approached, he made one final call for the day, reaching Sarah to thank her for her analysis. It made a difference, Sarah. We've got satellite confirmation now. Be careful, Uncle Bob, she replied, concern evident in her voice. I've seen cases where people pushing back against established narratives face significant blowback, even when they're right, especially when they're right. Your father didn't raise me to back down from the truth, Robert said softly. No, she agreed, but he also taught us to pick our battles wisely. This is bigger than one Bradley. After they hung up, Robert stood at his kitchen window, looking out at the quiet suburban street. Sarah was right. This had escalated beyond technical analysis of military equipment. He was challenging narratives that powerful interests were invested in maintaining. His bronze star caught the light from the hall lamp. The citation described his decisive leadership under fire. That seemed appropriate now, though the battlefield had changed. He thought of the current tank commanders, young men and women facing real threats, while also being used as pawns in information games. They deserved the truth, even if delivering it came with personal risk. Robert Mitchell had never backed down from a necessary fight. He wouldn't start now. The following morning brought unexpected developments. His second video had gone viral overnight, reaching far beyond his usual audience. News outlets were requesting interviews, which he declined pending further verification of his findings. More significantly, a whistleblower account had emerged on a military forum, claiming to be from someone within the Pentagon's assessment team. The post corroborated Robert's analysis, adding that internal disagreements existed about how losses were being reported to the public. Robert printed this new information for his evidence wall, adding another red string to connect it to existing data points. The pattern was expanding, suggesting multiple layers of information manipulation. His doorbell rang again. This time it was a courier with an envelope marked confidential. Inside was a handwritten note from Senator Howard, along with a flash drive. Mitchell, committee briefing moved up. Tomorrow, 900, enclosed as classified assessment of equipment performance. Destroy after reviewing. Robert locked his doors, disconnected his computer from the internet, and inserted the drive. The documents confirmed what he had pieced together from open sources. The Bradley in question had been disabled by a mine 10 days earlier, its crew had evacuated safely, and recovery had been deemed too risky due to ongoing artillery fire in the sector. Most tellingly, the official assessment rated the Bradley's armor performance as exceeding expectations, with crew survivability rates significantly higher than projected. This positive evaluation directly contradicted the public narrative of equipment vulnerability. After memorizing the key points, Robert followed security protocols, physically destroying the drive. His military training in handling classified information had never quite left him. By mid-afternoon, his investigation had taken an unexpected turn. Mike Daniels called with news. "Captain, I've identified the source of that Bradley video. It wasn't Russian military at all. It came through a media company based in Cyprus with ties to defense industry players." "Which players?" Robert asked, already suspecting the answer. "Primarily connected to next-gen combat systems. NGCS was a major defense contractor, currently competing for the next-generation infantry fighting vehicle contract worth billions of dollars. Their prototype was competing directly against an upgraded Bradley platform from the original manufacturer." "Follow the money," Robert murmured. "Always," Mike agreed. "And there's more. The same company produced content questioning the Leopard tank's effectiveness 3 weeks before your Bradley story broke. Same digital fingerprint, same distribution channels. This expanded the scope considerably. Not just one vehicle, but a pattern targeting multiple Western systems." Robert thanked Mike and updated his evidence wall. The connections were becoming clearer, pointing toward a coordinated information operation designed to undermine confidence in current equipment, potentially influencing billion-dollar procurement decisions and strategic policy. As he stepped back to view the full pattern, his computer chimed with a news alert. A Pentagon spokesman had just addressed the Bradley video during a press briefing. "We are aware of the video circulating online. While we cannot comment on specific vehicle losses for operational security reasons, we can confirm that our equipment performance remains within expected parameters." The carefully worded statement neither confirmed nor denied the specific claims, a telling bureaucratic evasion that Robert recognized from his years dealing with the defense establishment. His phone rang again, an unknown number. "Mitchell. Captain Mitchell, I believe you've been looking into certain equipment claims." The male voice was unfamiliar, measured and professional. "I represent interested parties who think your analysis has merit." Robert's guard immediately went up. "Which interested parties would those be?" "Let's just say people concerned with procurement integrity." "Would you be available for a confidential meeting this evening?" "I don't do anonymous meetings," Robert replied firmly. "Understood. Check your email in 5 minutes for credentials you can verify." True to his word, 5 minutes later, an email arrived containing identification for one Thomas Warner, Inspector General's Office, Department of Defense, with contact information Robert could independently verify. After confirming Warner's identity through official channels, Robert agreed to meet at a neutral location, a coffee shop in Arlington with good visibility and multiple exits. Old habits died hard. As evening approached, Robert prepared for what could be a pivotal conversation. He gathered key documents, including printouts of Sarah's analysis and Mike's findings. Before leaving, he encrypted his full research file and sent it to 3 separate trusted contacts with instructions to release it if they didn't hear from him within 24 hours. Paranoid perhaps, but as his old commander used to say, paranoid is what they call you until the ambush happens, then they call you prepared. The coffee shop was moderately busy, providing enough ambient noise for privacy while remaining public enough for safety. Robert arrived 20 minutes early, selected a table with a clear view of both the entrance and emergency exit, and ordered a black coffee. Warner arrived precisely on time. Mid-50s, trim build, the subtle tells of military background visible in his posture and situational awareness. He scanned the room before approaching, another habit Robert recognized. "Captain Mitchell, thank you for meeting." They shook hands, Warner's grip firm and brief. "Mr. Warner, how can I help the Inspector General's office?" Warner settled into the chair opposite, placing a slim briefcase on the table between them. "Your analysis of the Bradley footage has attracted attention at several levels. Some are concerned about its implications." "And which implications would those be?" Robert kept his expression neutral, assessing. "Potential manipulation of equipment, performance narratives to influence procurement decisions." Warner opened his briefcase, removing a folder stamped with security classifications. "The IG's office has been investigating similar patterns involving other systems." He showed Robert documents detailing internal reviews of media coverage surrounding defense equipment, reports highlighting unusual patterns in how equipment failures were being amplified while successes were minimized. "This goes beyond standard procurement competition," Warner continued, his voice low. "We're seeing evidence of coordinated information operations targeting specific systems, potentially involving both foreign and domestic actors with aligned interests." Robert studied the documents, recognizing elements that matched his own findings. "Why come to me? You have access to classified assessments I don't." Warner's expression remained professional, but his eyes conveyed genuine concern. "Because you've assembled the technical case independently, using open sources. That gives you credibility our internal investigations sometimes lack. And frankly, your YouTube audience reaches communities we need to communicate with." The implication was clear. Robert's platform could help counter the disinformation in ways official channels couldn't without appearing defensive or politically motivated. "What exactly are you asking me to do?" "Continue your analysis. We'll provide additional context where security allows. The truth about equipment performance should drive decisions, not manipulated narratives." Robert considered the proposal carefully. Cooperation with official channels had advantages, but could also compromise his independence. However, the mission objective was aligned, ensuring that those making critical decisions about equipment supporting American troops had accurate information. "I'll continue my independent analysis," Robert finally said. "I'm willing to review any unclassified information you can share, but my conclusions remain my own." Warner nodded, seemingly satisfied with this arrangement. "Fair enough. There's one more thing you should know." He leaned forward slightly. "Your videos have been noticed by more than just domestic audiences. Foreign intelligence services are monitoring your channel, particularly after your Javelin analysis last month correctly identified capabilities they were trying to downplay." This wasn't entirely surprising, but confirmation added a new dimension to Robert's understanding of his work's impact. What had begun as a retirement project sharing his expertise had evolved into something with potential strategic implications. As their meeting concluded, Warner provided a secure contact method and departed first. Robert remained for another 15 minutes, observing the room before leaving through the side exit, a precautionary measure that had become second nature. Driving home, Robert reflected on how his investigation had expanded from a single suspicious video to potentially uncovering a coordinated information operation with multiple stakeholders. The complexity reminded him of the changing nature of warfare, where battles for perception could be as consequential as physical engagements. His phone vibrated with a text message from Sarah. "Uncle Bob, check your email. Found something you need to see." Robert waited until he was home, doors locked and security system armed, before opening Sarah's email. She had discovered digital metadata linking the Bradley video to two other information operations targeting different equipment systems. The technical fingerprint was distinctive enough to suggest the same production team. More significantly, she had traced a financial connection between the Cyprus Media Company and a consulting firm employed by Next Gen Combat Systems. "Follow the money indeed," Robert murmured. He added this new information to his growing evidence wall, the red strings now forming a complex web connecting defense contractors, media companies, and specific narrative patterns. Tomorrow's committee briefing would be crucial. Robert began preparing his presentation, distilling complex technical analysis into clear findings that even non-specialist politicians could grasp. The stakes were too high for ambiguity or misinterpretation. As midnight approached, Robert stood before his father's flag, contemplating the evolving nature of service to country. In his tank commander days, the mission parameters had been clearer, the enemy visible through thermal sights, objectives marked on tactical maps. Now the battlefield was information space, where truth itself was contested territory. But the underlying duty remained unchanged: protect American interests, support the troops in the field, uphold the values that define the nation. Robert Mitchell had never backed down from that duty, regardless of the personal cost. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but his resolve remained unshaken. "The truth still matters," he told the empty room, his commander's voice filling the space with certainty. "And I still have the position advantage." The night outside his window was quiet, but Robert knew the battle was just beginning. Information warfare had no front lines, no rear echelons. In this new conflict, his experience, credibility, and commitment to truth were his primary weapons. He was still a commander, or still leading a charge. The terrain had changed, but the mission endured. The sun had barely crested the eastern horizon when Robert Mitchell arrived at the Senate office building. His military punctuality meant he was 40 minutes early for his committee briefing, time he would use to center himself and review his presentation one final time. The security checkpoint was quiet at this hour, staffed by a lone officer who brightened upon seeing Robert's Bronze Star lapel pin. "Vietnam or Desert Storm?" the guard asked as he processed Robert's visitor badge. "Desert Storm, 2nd Armored Division." The guard nodded with respect. "My old man was with the 1st Infantry there. Said the tankers saved their asses more than once." "We all had each other's backs," Robert replied with the simple solidarity of those who understood what that truly meant. The committee room was empty when Robert entered, its polished wooden table gleaming under recessed lighting. He arranged his materials precisely, positioning his laptop and connecting it to the room's presentation system. Each document was laid out in sequence, ready to build his case methodically, as he had once planned tank formations to breach Iraqi defenses. Senator Howard arrived 20 minutes before the scheduled start, alone and carrying a worn leather briefcase that had seen better days. "Early as always, Mitchell," he said with approval. "Some habits never die." "The early tank catches the target, Senator." Howard smiled at the adaptation of the old proverb. "We have 7 committee members attending today. Mix of both parties. Some are genuine in seeking the truth. Others have agendas. Present your findings as you would to your troops, straight facts, no political angles." "That's all I know how to do, sir." The room gradually filled with staffers and senators. Robert observed each arrival with the quiet assessment that had once helped him identify threats across desert horizons. He recognized several faces from news coverage, political figures with significant influence over defense appropriations. At precisely 0900, Senator Howard called the closed session to order. "Colleagues, we have limited time today. Captain Robert Mitchell is here at my invitation to present technical analysis regarding recent claims about Bradley infantry fighting vehicles. Captain Mitchell commanded tanks in Desert Storm in Iraq and has become a respected equipment analyst since retirement. His insights may prove valuable as we consider the upcoming defense appropriation amendments." Robert stood, nodding respectfully to the assembled officials. "Thank you, Senator Howard. I'll keep this factual and focused on technical assessment." He began his presentation with the basics of the Bradley system for those less familiar with military equipment, then methodically laid out his analysis of the controversial footage. His laptop displayed side-by-side comparisons, highlighting technical inconsistencies in the Russian claims. "The reactive armor configuration shown here is outdated by approximately 6 months," he explained, using a laser pointer to indicate specific sections. "Furthermore, the damage pattern to the right track assembly would render conventional towing impossible without specialized equipment not visible in the footage." He continued through his evidence, presenting Sarah's metadata analysis and the satellite imagery from Mike's intelligence contact, carefully anonymized to protect his sources. The presentation was delivered with the crisp precision that had characterized his mission briefings throughout his military career. Based on multiple lines of evidence, this Bradley has not moved from its position in at least 10 days, contrary to claims of recent capture. Furthermore, similar digital fingerprints connect this video to previous questionable claims about Leopard tanks. suggesting a coordinated information operation. Several committee members leaned forward as Robert presented his most significant finding. Most concerning is the connection to next-gen combat systems through this chain of media companies. His slide displayed the financial links Sarah had uncovered. NGCS is currently competing for the next-generation infantry fighting vehicle contract against an upgraded Bradley platform. Creating a narrative of Bradley vulnerability serves their direct financial interests. The room temperature seemed to drop several degrees. A silver-haired senator whose nameplate identified him as Senator Williams frowned deeply. These are serious allegations against an American defense contractor. Captain, are you suggesting corporate espionage or merely overzealous marketing? I present evidence, Senator, not conclusions about intent, Robert replied evenly. The financial connections and technical inconsistencies exist regardless of motivation. Another committee member, a former Navy officer judging by the service pin on his lapel, spoke up. Captain Mitchell, how confident are you in your technical assessment of the Bradley's condition as shown in the video? Completely confident, sir. The visible damage to the torsion bars and track assembly is consistent with mine damage. That vehicle isn't moving without an M88 recovery vehicle or equivalent heavy equipment. The questions continued for nearly 40 minutes, ranging from technical details about the Bradley to broader implications for defense procurement. Robert answered each with the directness and precision that had made his YouTube channel successful, never overreaching beyond what his evidence supported. As the session concluded, Senator Howard thanked him formally while several committee members approached with additional questions or simply to thank him for his service both past and present. Senator Williams, however, remained seated, studying Robert with an expression that reminded him of a tank gunner calculating a difficult shot. Outside the committee room, Senator Howard pulled Robert aside. Well done, Mitchell. You gave them exactly what they needed, facts without political slant. Not everyone appreciated that, of course. Senator Williams seemed particularly concerned. Howard's expression tightened slightly. Williams chairs the Defense Appropriations Subcommittee. His district includes 3 NGCS facilities. Draw your own conclusions. Robert nodded, understanding the political dimensions that now layered his technical investigation. What happens next? The committee will digest your information. Some will take it seriously, others will dismiss it based on their own interests. But you've planted seeds of doubt about the narrative being pushed. That alone is valuable. As they parted ways, Robert felt the familiar tension of post-mission uncertainty. He had delivered his intelligence assessment, but how it would be used remained beyond his control. The feeling echoed countless briefings throughout his military career, after which younger men would drive into danger carrying his information in their minds. The morning sun had given way to gathering clouds as Robert exited the Senate building. His phone had several missed calls and messages from his team. He checked them as he walked toward the parking garage. Mike had texted, "More satellite imagery coming. They're building a pattern." Sarah's message was more concerning. "Uncle Bob, someone's been asking about me at the Bureau. Questions about our connection. Call ASAP." And finally, a voicemail from Doc. "Captain, strange visitors at my shop today. 2 men asking about Bradley maintenance procedures. Didn't seem like typical military types. Watch your 6." Robert quickened his pace, situational awareness heightening as he scanned his surroundings. The instinct that had saved his life multiple times in combat was signaling again, warning of unseen threats. He reached his car and immediately called Sarah, who answered on the first ring. "What exactly happened?" he asked without preamble. "A man came to my department claiming to be conducting a security review. He specifically asked about personnel who might be doing outside consulting on military vehicle analysis. My supervisor thought it was strange enough to give me a heads up. Has there been any official notification of a review? None. I checked. It's not in the system." Robert processed this information, adding it to his tactical assessment. "Stay alert, but don't change your routine. That would confirm their suspicions. I'll speak with Warner at the IG's office, see if this is legitimate." After reassuring Sarah, he called Mike and then Doc, gathering details about their experiences. A pattern was emerging. Someone was tracking his investigation network, identifying his sources and collaborators. As Robert drove home, he maintained counter-surveillance procedures from his military training, taking an indirect route, varying his speed, and watching for vehicles that matched his turns. No obvious tail materialized, but the feeling of being watched persisted. At home, he secured his perimeter, checking door and window locks before settling at his computer to update his evidence wall with the day's developments. The pattern was expanding beyond a single misleading video into what appeared to be a coordinated effort to manipulate defense procurement decisions worth billions of dollars. His doorbell rang, unexpected and concerning given the day's events. Robert approached cautiously, checking his security camera before opening the door. Rebecca Chen from the Washington Post stood on his porch again, alone this time, her expression grave. "Ms. Chen, twice in 2 days is becoming a habit. This isn't a social call, Captain. May I come in? What I have to share shouldn't be discussed in the open." Robert assessed her briefly, then nodded, stepping aside to allow her entry. She carried a leather messenger bag clutched tightly against her side. Once inside, she spoke in a lowered voice. "Your committee testimony has already leaked. Someone is working to discredit you before the Post can publish our investigation." Robert's expression remained neutral. "I'm not surprised. Those contractors have significant resources and political connections. It's more than that." Rebecca removed a folder from her bag, spreading several documents on Robert's coffee table. "We've been tracking similar information operations targeting multiple weapon systems. Your Bradley analysis connects to our larger investigation." The documents showed analysis of media coverage patterns, financial connections, and specific narrative trends, all supporting Robert's findings but on a much larger scale. "This isn't just about one defense contract," Rebecca continued. "It appears to be a systematic effort to shape procurement decisions across multiple platforms. The financial stakes are in the tens of billions." Robert studied the documents, his tactical mind recognizing the strategic significance. "Why show me this? Isn't this your story to break?" Rebecca's expression was resolute. "Because they're coming after you first. Our sources indicate NGCS has hired a crisis management firm specializing in discrediting whistleblowers and analysts. They're preparing to paint you as a conspiracy theorist with an anti-American agenda. My service record speaks for itself. They'll use that too, suggest your combat experiences have affected your judgment, claim you're seeing patterns that aren't there because of PTSD." Robert felt a cold anger settling in his chest. Using a soldier's sacrifices against him violated something fundamental. But anger wouldn't serve his mission. Tactical thinking would. "What's your proposal, Ms. Chen?" "Coordination. My editor has approved a major investigative piece on defense procurement manipulation. Your technical analysis provides crucial evidence. Working together improves both of our positions." Robert considered the offer carefully. The media wasn't his natural ally. His military career had taught him caution around reporters. But circumstances created unexpected alliances, as he'd learned during joint operations with once adversarial forces. "I maintain editorial control over my technical assessments," he stated firmly, "and I need to verify your additional sources independently." "Understood. We protect our sources, but we can provide enough for verification." They spent the next 2 hours comparing information, finding the intersections between Rebecca's broader investigation and Robert's specific technical analysis. The pattern that emerged was more concerning than either had identified alone: a systematic manipulation of perception regarding multiple weapon systems, timed to influence specific procurement decisions. As they concluded, Rebecca asked a question that had clearly been on her mind. "Captain Mitchell, why did you start your YouTube channel? You could have had a lucrative defense consulting career after retirement." Robert glanced at the wall where his Bronze Star and Purple Heart hung beside photos of his tank crews from Desert Storm in Iraq. "The men who served under me deserve the truth. Too many procurement decisions are made for political or financial reasons, not battlefield effectiveness. The young soldiers who climb into those vehicles trust that someone has ensured they're the best available. I couldn't walk away from that responsibility." Rebecca nodded, understanding. "We'll publish in 3 days. Be prepared for significant blowback." After she departed, Robert called his team, updating them on this new development in the pending Washington Post investigation. Each had their role to play in the coming days, gathering additional evidence, securing their communications, preparing for the inevitable counterattack. That night, Robert couldn't sleep. His mind replayed moments from Desert Storm, the tense hours before engagement, knowing that everything had been prepared, but that chaos always emerged once battle was joined. He had learned to embrace that uncertainty, to adapt rather than expect perfect execution of plans. By morning, he had decided on his next move. If they were planning to discredit him, he would strike first with absolute transparency. He would record a special video explaining his background, methodology, and the evidence behind his Bradley analysis. No politically charged language, no accusations of conspiracy, just straightforward facts presented by a soldier with nothing to hide. The recording took 3 hours to complete. Robert was meticulous, citing each source, explaining his analytical process, and connecting the technical evidence to established facts. He wore his formal attire, including his service ribbons, a visual reminder of his dedication to country. I present this information not to advance any agenda, but because the truth matters, he concluded. The men and women currently manning these vehicles deserve equipment decisions based on facts, not manipulated narratives. As always, I remain open to new evidence that might alter these conclusions. He uploaded the video titled simply Bradley Analysis, Full Evidence and Methodology. Within hours, it had gathered tens of thousands of views, shared extensively within military and defense communities. The counterattack came swiftly. A defense industry blog published an article questioning Robert's technical expertise on the Bradley system, highlighting that he had commanded tanks, not Bradleys. Several social media accounts began circulating similar talking points, attempting to undermine his credibility. More concerning was the coordinated appearance of comments questioning his mental stability, suggesting his combat experiences had left him seeing conspiracies where none exist. The tactic was precisely what Rebecca had warned about in an attempt to use his service against him. Robert monitored these developments with the detached analysis of a battlefield commander. Each attack revealed something about his opponent's priorities, resources, vulnerabilities. He had expected this, had prepared his own forces accordingly. His phone rang mid-afternoon. Thomas Warner from the Inspector General's office. Mitchell, I've reviewed your committee testimony and your latest video. Impressive work, but you've stirred up a hornet's nest. Not my first time dealing with hostile fire, Warner. This is different. I've received calls questioning why the IG's office is communicating with you. Someone has significant political pull. Are you being pressured to distance yourself? Warner's silence was answer enough. I understand, Robert said finally. You have your position to consider. For what it's worth, I think you're on the right track. Just be careful. These people fight with different weapons than you're used to. After the call ended, Robert received an email alert. A new article had appeared on a military technology website, quoting an anonymous Pentagon source claiming the Bradley in the controversial footage had in fact been recovered by Russian forces, contradicting Robert's analysis. The battle lines were clearly drawn. Robert forwarded the article to his team, asking for their assessment. Mike responded first. Captain, this is easily disproven. The satellite imagery shows the vehicle hasn't moved. Either their Pentagon source is misinformed or lying. Sarah added her own analysis. The quote has specific technical language that matches NGCS marketing materials. I suspect their PR team ghostwrote this for whatever Pentagon contact they have. Doc was more blunt. Pure horseshit, Captain. That Bradley isn't going anywhere without a heavy recovery vehicle. The damage I identified would require a maintenance depot for repair. Robert integrated their responses, updating his evidence wall with this new disinformation attempt. The pattern was becoming clearer, but so were the forces aligned against his investigation. His doorbell rang again, becoming an ominously frequent occurrence. This time, his security camera showed two men in dark suits, their body language suggesting federal law enforcement or intelligence services. Robert tensed momentarily, then relaxed. If they meant him harm, they wouldn't announce themselves so openly. He opened the door with cautious neutrality. Gentlemen, Captain Robert Mitchell, I'm Agent Daniels, this is Agent Cortez, FBI. They displayed credentials that Robert examined carefully, noting the proper security features. We'd like to ask you some questions about your recent online activities. Robert assessed their demeanor professional, but not overtly hostile. May I ask what this concerns specifically? Potential unauthorized disclosure of classified information regarding military equipment. Robert nodded calmly. I'm happy to cooperate. Would you prefer to conduct this interview here or at your field office? The agent seemed slightly surprised by his willingness. Here is fine, if you're comfortable with that. Please come in, then. Robert led them to his living room, deliberately choosing seats that would keep his evidence wall visible. If they were legitimate FBI agents, transparency served his interests. Captain Mitchell, recent videos you've posted contain detailed technical assessments of Bradley infantry fighting vehicles and references to satellite imagery. We need to understand how you obtained this information. Robert maintained eye contact, his voice steady. All my analysis is based on open-source materials. The technical specifications of the Bradley are publicly available through Army field manuals and manufacturer documentation. The satellite imagery came from commercial sources. You referenced specific damage to torsion bars visible in frame 27 of the Russian video. That level of detail suggests specialized knowledge. I commanded tanks for 20 years, Agent Daniels. Vehicle suspension systems haven't changed fundamentally since World War II. Anyone with armored vehicle maintenance experience could identify those issues. The questioning continued for nearly an hour, covering his sources, methodology, and contacts. Robert answered each question directly but carefully, protecting his sources while maintaining transparency about his own actions. As the interview concluded, Agent Cortez, who had been mostly silent, asked a final question. Captain, are you aware that Next Gen Combat Systems has filed a formal complaint alleging your videos contain proprietary information about competing vehicle systems? Robert's expression remained neutral, though internally he recognized this as the expected counterattack. I am not. However, all information in my videos comes from public sources. I'd be happy to provide documentation for each technical point if needed. After the agents departed, Robert immediately called Sarah. I just had FBI visitors asking about classified information in my videos. That's concerning. Was it legitimate or theater? Their credentials appeared authentic, but the timing is suspicious, right after my committee testimony. Sarah's voice carried professional assessment. It could be a phishing expedition based on complaints from NGCS or intimidation tactics. Did they cite specific violations? Vague references to proprietary information and satellite imagery. Keep detailed notes of everything they asked and your responses. If this escalates to legal action, those records will be crucial. Robert agreed. Reed then called Senator Howard to inform him of the FBI visit. The senator's response was troubled. This suggests they're pulling significant levers, Mitchell. Bureau visits don't happen without someone pushing hard. I'll make some inquiries, see who authorized this. By evening, Robert's video had accumulated over 300,000 views and thousands of comments. The response from military communities was overwhelmingly supportive, with many active duty and veteran viewers contributing additional technical observations supporting his analysis. However, a coordinated wave of negative comments had also appeared, using suspiciously similar language questioning his patriotism and expertise. Several tech-savvy viewers noted these appeared to be bot accounts, further suggesting an organized response to his revelations. Robert's inbox contained dozens of messages from military personnel sharing their own experiences with equipment reporting disparities. These first-hand accounts formed a troubling pattern of inflated failure rates and minimized successes, systematic narrative shaping that aligned with specific procurement agendas. He was compiling these testimonials when his power went out unexpectedly, plunging his home into darkness. Robert immediately went to alert status, moving away from windows and retrieving the flashlight he kept within arm's reach, a habit from deployments where infrastructure attacks often preceded more direct threats. His phone still had signal. No power outage reports for his area. The timing was too convenient to be coincidence. Robert moved efficiently through his darkened home, checking entry points while calling the power company from his cell phone. They confirmed no reported outages or maintenance in his area, escalating his suspicion. He texted Mike, "Possible security situation, power cut at my location, no apparent cause." Within seconds, Mike replied, "On my way, stay alert, 15 minutes out." Robert positioned himself with visibility of his front and back entrances, maintaining the tactical patience that had served him well in combat. If this was an intimidation tactic, reaction was exactly what they wanted. If it was preparation for something more direct, alertness was his best defense. 12 minutes later, his power returned as suddenly as it had failed. His security cameras came back online, showing no unusual activity around his property. The event's message was clear. Your security can be compromised at our discretion. Mike arrived as promised, conducting a perimeter check while Robert rebooted his systems and verified no intrusion had occurred during the outage. The two veterans moved with the coordinated efficiency of men who had faced danger together before, communicating with minimal words. Professional job, Mike assessed after completing his inspection. Targeted your property specifically. Neighboring houses were unaffected. Sending a message rather than preparing an actual breach, Robert concluded. Classic intimidation tactic. They're hoping you'll back down. Robert's expression hardened. They don't know who they're dealing with. They spent the next hour upgrading Robert's security, establishing backup power sources, additional cameras, and emergency protocols. Mike's extensive contacts provided enhanced measures beyond standard civilian systems. "I'll have a couple of my security firm guys keep an eye on your place," Mike offered as they finished. "Former Force Recon Marines, they know what to look for." Robert nodded gratefully. "This is escalating faster than I expected. They're pulling multiple levers simultaneously: media attacks, legal pressure, intimidation tactics. Which means you've hit something significant. They wouldn't expend these resources otherwise." After Mike departed, Robert received a text from an unknown number. "Check your private email, information you need to see." Cautious but curious, Robert accessed his encrypted email account from a separate device dedicated to sensitive communications. A new message contained a single document, a confidential memorandum from NGCS to its crisis management team, outlining a strategic response to Mitchell analysis. The document detailed a multi-pronged approach to discrediting Robert's findings, including media placements, leveraging political connections, and exploring regulatory compliance pressure points. Most significantly, it referenced leveraging intelligence community relationships to assess classification concerns. The sender remained anonymous, identified only as someone who still believes in the truth. Robert studied the document carefully, assessing its authenticity. The formatting, terminology, and content aligned with standard corporate crisis response procedures. If fraudulent, it was expertly crafted. He forwarded it to Rebecca Chen with a note. "Received from anonymous source. Cannot verify authenticity, but aligns with recent events. Use accordingly." Her response came within minutes. "Matches our other sources. This confirms the coordinated nature of the response. We're accelerating our publication timeline." The night deepened around Robert's home as he continued updating his evidence wall, adding the new document and connecting it to the pattern of escalation. The picture was becoming clearer, a systematic effort to shape defense procurement decisions through information manipulation, with billions of dollars at stake. His phone rang at nearly midnight. "Sarah, Uncle Bob, I've been placed on administrative leave pending a security review. They're claiming potential misuse of FBI analytical tools." Robert felt a surge of protective anger. "This is retaliation. They're trying to isolate me by targeting my support network. I expected it after they started asking questions last week. My supervisor knows it's baseless, but he had to follow procedure once the complaint was filed." "I'm sorry you've been drawn into this, Sarah." "Don't be. Dad would have been right beside you in this fight. So am I." After assuring Sarah he would help navigate this situation, Robert called Doc to warn him about the escalation. Doc reported no direct pressure yet, but would secure his business records and prepare for potential inquiries. Robert slept fitfully that night, his combat instincts maintaining a level of alertness even in rest. The morning brought news that accelerated the timeline dramatically. Rebecca Chen called at 0700. "Captain, we're publishing today. Multiple sources confirm NGCS has secured a congressional hearing next week to address misinformation about defense procurement. They're moving to discredit your analysis before our investigation goes public." "Understood. What's your timeline?" "Noon Eastern Time, front page digital, print tomorrow. Are you prepared for the response?" Robert thought of countless pre-battle moments, the calm clarity that always came when plans gave way to action. "I've been preparing for this my entire career, Ms. Chen. Truth is worth defending, regardless of the opposition." After the call, Robert contacted Senator Howard, informing him of the impending Washington Post investigation. The senator was grim but resolute. "This will create significant waves, Mitchell. Committee members with defense industry ties will distance themselves immediately. Others will want to investigate further. I'll do what I can to ensure that technical evidence isn't buried under political maneuvering." By mid-morning, Robert had prepared his response to the imminent publication, updating his YouTube channel with a brief statement acknowledging the forthcoming Washington Post investigation and reiterating his commitment to factual analysis without political agenda. His phone rang continuously as news of the pending story leaked through Washington's channels. He screened each call carefully, speaking only with his core team and Senator Howard, declining numerous media requests until the full story was public. At precisely noon, the Washington Post published its investigation. Battlefield of Perception: How Defense Contractors Manipulate Equipment Performance Narratives. The comprehensive article detailed systematic information operations designed to influence procurement decisions, citing multiple anonymous sources within the defense establishment. Roberts Bradley analysis featured prominently as a case study of technical evidence contradicting manufactured narratives. Most significantly, the article revealed financial connections between media companies producing equipment, failure content, and specific defense contractors standing to benefit from replacement contracts. Roberts' technical assessment was presented alongside financial analysis and insider testimony, creating a compelling picture of systematic manipulation. Within hours, the story had been picked up by major news outlets, defense industry publications, and military forums. Roberts' subscriber count surged as viewers sought his direct analysis. Comments flooded in, many from current and former military personnel confirming similar patterns with other equipment systems. The counteroffensive began almost immediately. NGCS issued a formal statement calling the Washington Post story irresponsible journalism based on unverified claims and technical misunderstandings. Several defense industry blogs published articles questioning the technical basis of Roberts' analysis, focusing on minor details while ignoring his central findings. More concerning was a statement from Congressman Lewis, chair of the House Armed Services Committee, announcing an emergency hearing to address misinformation threatening national security procurement processes. The language clearly targeted Roberts' analysis, framing it as a threat rather than a contribution to procurement integrity. Senator Howard called with an update. "They're moving faster than expected, Mitchell. Lewis is a major recipient of defense industry campaign contributions. This hearing is designed to discredit you for the post-investigation gains traction." "When is the hearing scheduled?" "Day after tomorrow. They're calling Pentagon officials to testify about Bradley performance. You haven't been invited, which speaks volumes." Robert processed this information with tactical assessment. They want to control the narrative. A hearing where I'm discussed but not present allows them to frame my analysis without direct rebuttal. Precisely. I'm working to get you added as a witness, but Lewis controls the witness list. It's an uphill battle. After the call, Robert received an email from Thomas Warner at the Inspector General's office. The message was brief. "Check the Washington Post comments section. Important connection you should see." Robert found the comment in question, posted by an anonymous user but containing specific technical language that caught his attention. The comment noted that the Bradley's reactive armor configuration shown in the Russian video matched a test variant that had been rejected 6 months earlier due to manufacturing defects, a detail not public but significant if accurate. Warner was subtly providing additional confirmation while maintaining official distance, a tactical compromise Robert understood well from his own military experience. His evidence wall had expanded to cover most of his living room, red strings connecting documents, images, and financial records in an intricate web of information warfare. The pattern was clearer now. This wasn't just about one Bradley or even one contract, but a systematic approach to shaping procurement decisions through perception management rather than performance facts. Robert updated his team, preparing them for the accelerated timeline. Mike would secure additional satellite imagery to confirm the Bradley's continued immobility. Sarah, though on administrative leave, would analyze the financial connections highlighted in the post-investigation. Doc would prepare technical documentation supporting Robert's analysis of the vehicle's damage. As evening approached, Robert recorded a new video addressing the Washington Post investigation and the announced congressional hearing. As many of you know, today the Washington Post published an investigation into information manipulation affecting defense procurement decisions. My technical analysis of the Bradley footage was included as one example of this broader pattern. I stand by that analysis, which is based entirely on publicly available information and standard engineering principles. He continued with characteristic directness. I understand a congressional hearing has been called to address these issues. While I have not been invited to testify, I remain willing to present my technical findings directly to any committee interested in the facts. As always, my only agenda is ensuring our troops have equipment decisions based on actual performance, not manufactured narratives. The video quickly accumulated tens of thousands of views, with military and veteran communities rallying in support. Comment sections filled with testimonials from current and former service members, citing similar experiences with equipment reporting disparities. Robert's phone rang again. "Rebecca Chen. Captain, our sources indicate NGCS is pursuing a different angle now. They're suggesting your analysis contains classified performance data about Bradley vulnerabilities information that could benefit adversaries." "That's absurd. Everything in my videos comes from publicly available technical specifications and visual analysis. Truth isn't their priority. Creating doubt is. They need to discredit your analysis by any means available. After the call, Robert reviewed his videos with renewed scrutiny, confirming that all information presented was derived from public sources. The accusation was clearly tactical rather than substantive, designed to create a classification cloud over factual technical analysis. His doorbell rang again. This time, the security camera showed a uniformed sheriff's deputy, official vehicle visible in the background. Robert answered with calm professionalism. "Captain Mitchell, I have a document to serve you." The deputy handed over a legal envelope. "You've been subpoenaed to appear before the House Armed Services Committee day after tomorrow, during 900 hours. Robert accepted the document with a nod of acknowledgement. "Thank you, Deputy." After the officer departed, Robert opened the subpoena, confirming the details. Senator Howard had apparently succeeded in getting him added to the witness list, though the subpoena rather than invitation suggested this wasn't a friendly inclusion. He immediately called his team, updating them on this development. Each would need to provide supporting documentation for his testimony, organized for maximum clarity under likely hostile questioning. "This is actually good news," Mike assessed. "They were planning to discuss your analysis without you present. Now they have to face you directly. But it also means facing a committee where multiple members have financial connections to defense contractors," Sarah cautioned. "Hostile territory isn't new to us," Robert replied with the steady confidence that had guided tank platoons through enemy lines. "We'll proceed with the same approach, factual, direct, and prepared for all contingencies." That night, Robert prepared for the congressional hearing with the same methodical thoroughness he had once applied to combat operations. Each potential question was anticipated, each technical point supported by multiple sources, each vulnerability identified and addressed. His kitchen table was covered with documents, his laptop displaying relevant technical specifications and precedents from previous hearings. This was unfamiliar terrain, but the principles remained the same. Identify the objective, secure your position, maintain situational awareness, and advance with purpose. A text message arrived from Senator Howard. "Committee stack 7-5 against you. Prepare for hostile questioning focused on classification concerns rather than technical accuracy. They'll try to make this about process, not substance." Robert acknowledged the warning, adjusting his preparation accordingly. Classification challenges were a common tactic to divert attention from substantive issues in defense matters, a smokescreen he had encountered throughout his military career. As midnight approached, Robert stood before his father's flag again, centering himself for the battle ahead. Unlike tank warfare with its clear objectives and defined opponents, this conflict operated in shades of gray, where victory would not be marked by captured territory but by preserved truth. Yet the stakes were just as real. Billions in taxpayer dollars, and more importantly, the lives of service members depending on equipment, procurement decisions based on performance rather than profit. Different battlefield, same principles, he told the silent room. Maintain the high ground, control your fires, protect your flanks, and never lose sight of the mission. Outside, rain began to fall, drumming steadily on the roof in a rhythm that reminded Robert of distant artillery, a sound that had once been the backdrop to his professional life. In some ways, he had never left the battlefield. The terrain had changed, the weapons evolved, but the fundamental conflict between truth and deception remained eternal. He would face this congressional committee with the same resolve that had carried him through the burning oil fields of Kuwait and the ambush-laden roads of Iraq. Not with anger or political rhetoric, but with the steady determination of a soldier who had learned that truth was both a weapon and a shield. The Washington night deepened around his Virginia home. The Capitol's power brokers undoubtedly strategizing their own approach to tomorrow's confrontation. Robert Mitchell prepared as he always had with disciplined focus, unwavering purpose, and the quiet courage that had defined his service to country. Tomorrow would bring in its own challenges, but he had faced worse odds before, had advanced against stronger opposition. This battle, like those before it, would be won through preparation, principle, and the steady resolve of a commander who knew the value of the high ground. The morning dawned gray and cool, fitting weather for the confrontation ahead. Robert dressed with deliberate care in his charcoal suit, regimental tie, and the small American flag pin that had accompanied him to countless official functions. His appearance would project what he was, a professional with nothing to hide. Senator Howard had arranged to meet him before the hearing, providing last-minute intelligence on committee dynamics. They convened in a small conference room near the hearing chamber, the senator's expression grave but determined. Mitchell, they've called 3 Pentagon officials to testify before you technical experts who will likely contradict your analysis without providing supporting evidence. Classification shields will be their primary defense. Standard operating procedure, Robert noted. Create the appearance of authoritative contradiction without allowing examination of the underlying data. Exactly. Your advantage is credibility with military communities and technical precision. Don't let them bait you into political statements or speculation beyond your evidence. I learned long ago to maintain discipline under fire, Senator. Howard nodded with understanding that came from his own military background. The technical details matter here. Most committee members won't follow the engineering specifics, but the record will stand for those who know what to look for. Their strategy session was interrupted by an aide announcing the hearing would begin in 15 minutes. Robert gathered his materials, a focused selection of documents that would support his testimony without overwhelming the committee with technical details. The hearing room was already crowded when Robert entered, cameras positioned to capture the proceedings for public record. He recognized several defense industry representatives in the audience, their expressions professionally neutral but attention-focused. Congressman Lewis called the session to order precisely at 0900, his opening statement setting a tone of concern about unsubstantiated claims undermining confidence in critical defense systems. The framing was clear. Robert's analysis was being characterized as a problem rather than a contribution to procurement integrity. The Pentagon witnesses testified first, each presenting carefully worded assessments of Bradley performance that neither directly confirmed nor denied Robert's specific technical points. Their testimony was laden with references to classified performance data that could not be discussed in open session, a tactic Robert had anticipated. When finally called to testify, Robert took his position at the witness table with the straight-backed poise of his tank commander days. He began with a brief statement of his background and analytical approach, emphasizing his reliance on publicly available technical information. My analysis of the Bradley footage is based on standard engineering principles and publicly documented specifications. I have identified specific technical inconsistencies that contradict claims of recent capture, including damage patterns that would prevent conventional towing and outdated reactive armor configurations. Congressman Lewis began the questioning, his tone suggesting skepticism from the outset. Captain Mitchell, did you consult with current Bradley program managers before publishing your analysis? No, Congressman. My analysis stands on publicly available technical specifications and visual evidence. However, I have consulted with numerous military vehicle technicians who confirm my assessment. And yet 3 Pentagon experts have just testified that your conclusions may not align with classified performance data. Robert maintained his professional demeanor. With respect, Congressman, they did not specifically refute any of my technical points. They simply referenced classified data without indicating how it might contradict my analysis. A Democratic committee member followed up. Captain Mitchell, could you explain in specific terms why you believe the Bradley in question could not have been towed as claimed? Robert welcomed the opportunity to focus on technical substance. The visible damage to the right track assembly, specifically the torsion bars and drive sprocket, would require specialized heavy equipment for recovery. The video shows only a standard truck with winch capability, which would be insufficient for the vehicle's condition. The questioning alternated between technical inquiries from members seemingly interested in the facts and procedural challenges from those aligned with defense industry interests. Robert maintained his disciplined focus on the evidence, refusing to be drawn into speculation or political commentary. Congressman Taylor, whose district included major NGCS facilities, took a more aggressive approach. Captain Mitchell, are you aware that sharing specific vulnerability information about active military equipment could benefit adversaries? I have shared no information that isn't already publicly documented, Congressman. Technical specifications of the Bradley are available in unclassified field manuals and manufacturer documentation. Yet your analysis specifically highlights vulnerable areas of the vehicle's suspension system. I identified standard components visible in the video itself. Components whose function and location are documented in public technical manuals available to anyone, including adversaries. The exchange continued with Taylor attempting to create the impression of security concerns without specifically identifying any classified information Robert had allegedly disclosed. The tactic was transparent to those familiar with defense hearings, but created a cloud of suspicion for casual observers. Throughout the 3-hour hearing, Robert maintained his composure, addressing each question with direct factual responses and declining to engage in hypotheticals beyond his evidence. His military experience had taught him that maintaining discipline under pressure was often the difference between success and failure. As the hearing concluded, Congressman Lewis made a final statement suggesting the committee would continue investigating these serious concerns about unauthorized technical disclosures, an ominous framing that ignored the substantive issues while implying wrongdoing. Senator Howard met Robert outside the hearing room, his expressions suggesting cautious approval. "You held the line well, Mitchell. Stuck to your evidence and didn't give them ammunition for their security concerns narrative. Will it make any difference? More than you might think. The technical details are on record now. They can't simply dismiss them without addressing the specific points you raised." And several committee members were genuinely interested in the procurement integrity questions. As they parted ways, Robert checked his phone, finding dozens of messages from supporters. His latest video had surpassed 1 million views, with military and veteran communities rallying around his technical analysis. The Washington Post investigation had sparked additional media inquiries into defense procurement manipulation. Most significantly, an email from Rebecca Chen indicated that 2 additional whistleblowers had come forward after the hearing, offering corroborating evidence of systematic narrative manipulation affecting equipment procurement decisions. The spotlight Robert had helped create was illuminating broader patterns. His drive home was accompanied by news radio coverage of the hearing, most focusing on the classification concerns rather than the technical substance, a predictable framing that nonetheless frustrated his sense of mission priority. The truth about equipment performance affecting troops in the field was being obscured by procedural smokescreens. As Robert approached his neighborhood, his tactical awareness heightened. Something felt wrong. The streets seemed too quiet, lacking the usual afternoon activity. He slowed his approach, scanning for anomalies. His phone rang. "Mike Daniels. Captain, do not return to your house. I repeat, do not return home. My security team reports suspicious activity." 2 unknown vehicles parked nearby for over an hour, occupants maintaining surveillance. Robert immediately altered his route, muscle memory from combat zones taking over as he implemented counter-surveillance driving techniques. "What's your assessment?" "Unclear if it's intimidation or preparation for something more direct. I have my team maintaining distance observation. Where are you now?" 3 minutes out, but diverting to secondary location. "Good. I'll meet you at the fallback point in 30 minutes. Robert navigated to their predetermined secondary meeting location, a public shopping center with multiple access points and sufficient activity to provide cover. His mind processed this escalation with the calm analysis that had served him in combat. No panic, just tactical adjustment. The stakes had clearly risen. From media attacks to legal pressure to now direct surveillance, the pattern suggested an opponent willing to employ increasingly aggressive measures. This wasn't just about one Bradley video anymore, but about the broader threat his investigation posed to powerful financial interests. As he waited for Mike, Robert considered the parallels to battlefield escalation, how opponents tested boundaries before committing to major engagements. His response now would set expectations for what would follow. Mike arrived precisely on schedule, his expression conveying professional concern rather than alarm. "My team has identified the surveillance vehicles, private security contractors, not government. License plates trace back to a shell company with defense industry connections. Intimidation rather than law enforcement, then. Appears that way. They're making no attempt to hide their presence. They want you to know you're being watched." Robert nodded, understanding the tactic. "Status of my property?" "No indication of breach, but I wouldn't return tonight. They're sending a message, establishing psychological pressure." The 2 veterans discussed options with the efficient clarity of men accustomed to threat assessment. Robert would stay at a predetermined secure location while Mike's team monitored his property and maintained counter-surveillance. Before departing, Robert made one final call to Senator Howard, updating him on this development. The senator's response was troubled. "This crosses a line, Mitchell. Private intimidation tactics against a congressional witness could have serious consequences. I'll make some calls, put pressure on them to back off." "I appreciate that, Senator, but I've faced worse pressure." "I know you have. That's why they underestimate what they're dealing with. As evening fell, Robert settled into the secure location, a modest but comfortable apartment maintained by Mike's security firm for situations requiring temporary relocation. His necessary materials had been transferred there earlier as a contingency measure, allowing him to continue his work despite the disruption. The day's events had clarified the battlefield. His congressional testimony, despite hostile questioning, had placed critical technical evidence on official record. The Washington Post investigation had connected his specific analysis to broader patterns of procurement manipulation. Additional whistleblowers were coming forward, expanding the evidence base. His opponents were responding with escalating pressure media attacks, legal maneuvering, surveillance intimidation. But each escalation revealed their concern about the effectiveness of his challenge to their narrative control. Robert reviewed the satellite imagery Mike had secured, confirming once again that the Bradley in question remained unmoved from its original position even now, contradicting claims of capture. This physical reality, documented through multiple time-stamped images, stood as irrefutable evidence against the manufactured narrative. His phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. "Pressure will increase. They're desperate now. Stay the course. More evidence coming." The anonymous supporter was likely one of the whistleblowers mentioned by Rebecca Chen, someone inside the system who recognized the importance of procurement integrity but couldn't speak publicly. Robert thought of the young soldiers currently manning Bradleys in combat zones, their lives depending on equipment performance rather than procurement politics. He thought of his own tank crews from decades past, men who had trusted that the vehicles carrying them into battle represented the best possible protection, not the most profitable contract. Some battles extended beyond their immediate engagement, he reflected. This fight wasn't just about one misleading video or even one procurement decision, but about the system that prioritized narrative over performance, profit over protection. As night deepened outside his temporary sanctuary, Robert Mitchell prepared for what would come next. The battlefield had changed throughout his career from desert terrain to urban warfare, to now the contested information space of defense procurement. But his mission remained constant, seeking truth, protecting those who served, and maintaining the discipline necessary to advance against opposition. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but he had faced uncertain mornings before, had led men forward when outcomes remained unclear. This mission, like those before it, would be accomplished through persistence, adaptation, and the unwavering resolve of a commander who understood that some principles were worth defending, regardless of the cost. Dawn broke over the secure apartment with muted gray light filtering through tactical blinds. Robert Mitchell had been awake for hours, reviewing evidence and planning his next move with the methodical thoroughness that had defined his military career. Sleep had come in tactical intervals, the combat veteran's ability to rest while maintaining situational awareness. His phone displayed multiple missed calls from unknown numbers, media outlets seeking comments perhaps, or more troubling contacts. Robert ignored them, focusing instead on messages from his core team. Mike reported that surveillance of his home continued but had become less obvious, suggesting a shift in tactics rather than abandonment. Doc had secured his workshop against potential intrusion. Sarah remained on administrative leave, but was using her forced downtime to analyze financial connections between defense contractors and media outlets pushing equipment failure narratives. A new message arrived from Rebecca Chen. Breaking story on multiple platforms today. Additional whistleblowers have come forward. Be prepared for significant reaction. Robert checked the major news sites, finding the Washington Post follow-up investigation prominently featured. Procurement patterns. Defense whistleblowers reveal systematic manipulation of equipment performance data. The article detailed testimonies from 3 anonymous defense procurement officials, describing organized efforts to exaggerate equipment failures while minimizing successes, creating justification for replacement contracts worth billions. Robert's Bradley analysis was cited as the catalyst that had encouraged others to come forward. His technical assessment validated by internal experts who could not speak publicly. Most significantly, the article revealed financial connections between media companies producing equipment failure content and consulting firms employed by defense contractors seeking replacement contracts. The pattern extended beyond the Bradley to multiple weapon systems. Robert's phone rang. Senator Howard. "Mitchell, have you seen the Post's follow-up?" "Just reading it now." This has escalated beyond a single equipment issue. Multiple committee members are now asking questions about procurement integrity across platforms. Even industry-aligned representatives can't simply dismiss this pattern. How are they responding? Mixed tactics. Some are attacking the whistleblowers as disgruntled employees. Others are calling for classified briefings to take the discussion behind closed doors. But the financial connections the Post revealed are harder to dismiss. Robert processed this tactical update. What's our next move? The committee has scheduled a closed session to review procurement evaluation procedures. I've secured you consulting status to participate given your technical expertise. This moves beyond public testimony into actual policy review. This development exceeded Robert's expectations. From YouTube analyst to congressional consultant represented significant battlefield advancement, but experience had taught him that progress often invited counterattack. When is the session? Tomorrow, 1300 hours. I'll send secure transportation. Given recent surveillance of your residence, standard precautions seem advisable. After the call, Robert updated his team. Each would continue their supporting operations while he prepared for the committee session. The battlefield was shifting from public information space to policy implementation, a more consequential arena, but also more vulnerable to established power structures. His phone rang again. Thomas Warner from the Inspector General's office. Mitchell, I needed to warn you. There's significant pressure building within certain departments to initiate a formal investigation into your handling of sensitive information. It's political cover to discredit your analysis while avoiding the substantive issues. I've handled nothing classified or proprietary. Everything in my videos comes from public sources. You and I know that, but an investigation creates a cloud regardless of outcome. Standard playbook to neutralize whistleblowers and outside analysts. I'm pushing back through official channels, but you should prepare for potential escalation. Robert thanked Warner for the warning, adding this new threat vector to his tactical assessment. The pattern was familiar from his military experience. When conventional opposition failed, asymmetric attacks followed. Throughout the afternoon, Robert monitored media coverage of the expanding story. Military forums were particularly active, with current and former service members contributing additional examples of equipment reporting manipulation. The conversation had expanded beyond the Bradley to multiple systems and procurement programs. Mike called with an update on the surveillance situation. Captain, they've pulled back to less obvious positions, but they're still watching. My team spotted specialized communications equipment consistent with electronic surveillance. They may be attempting to monitor your communications. Understood. Implement ComSec protocols. Robert switched to secure communication methods established earlier with his team, utilizing encrypted channels and counter-surveillance techniques from his military background. The precautions might seem excessive to civilians, but experience had taught him that preparation often determines survival. By evening, the story had reached national news broadcasts. Several members of Congress were calling for formal investigations into procurement manipulation, while defense industry representatives issued carefully worded statements emphasizing their commitment to providing the best possible equipment for American troops. As Robert prepared for the next day's committee session, his secure phone rang with an encrypted call. Rebecca Chen. Captain Mitchell, I thought you should know. Our sources indicate NGCS executives held an emergency board meeting today. They're concerned about stock value implications if the procurement manipulation story continues to expand. What's their likely response? Aggressive damage control. They've retained a crisis management firm specializing in whistleblower mitigation. The terminology in their internal communications suggests they view this as an existential threat to certain contracts, meaning they'll escalate beyond media and legal pressure. That's our assessment. Be careful, Captain. After the call ended, Robert conducted a security review of his temporary location, checking entry points and establishing awareness zones. The habits formed during multiple combat deployments served him now in this different but equally consequential battlefield. His secure email, pinged with an encrypted message from Sarah, found direct financial links between NGCS board members and the media company that first published the Bradley capture video. Transfers through 3 shell corporations, but the connection is documented, sending secure file with evidence. Robert reviewed the financial data, adding it to his expanding intelligence picture. The pattern was becoming undeniable, a systematic effort to manipulate equipment performance narratives for financial gain, regardless of battlefield implications. As night fell, Robert prepared his materials for the committee session, organizing technical documentation and financial evidence into a comprehensive briefing. The tactical approach remained unchanged: clear facts, methodical analysis, and unwavering focus on the mission, ensuring procurement decisions serve soldiers rather than shareholders. Sleep came in disciplined intervals, the soldiers' rest that maintained readiness while allowing recovery. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but challenges had defined his career long before this current battle. Morning arrived with news that NGCS stock had dropped 12% in pre-market trading, a market reaction to the expanding procurement manipulation story. Financial consequences were now aligning with political pressure, creating momentum for potential reform. Senator Howard's secure transport arrived precisely at the arranged time, a nondescript SUV with professional security features. The driver, a former Special Forces operator, judging by his bearing and situational awareness, maintained counter-surveillance protocols during the journey to Capitol Hill. The committee room for the closed session was smaller than the public hearing space, designed for confidential discussions rather than political theater. 10 senators were present, representing both parties and various defense oversight committees. Technical experts from the Pentagon and procurement specialists from the Department of Defense completed the assembly. Senator Howard introduced Robert, emphasizing his technical expertise rather than his public analyst role. The framing was deliberate, establishing him as a substantive contributor rather than a political antagonist. Captain Mitchell brings 30 years of armored vehicle experience and detailed technical knowledge that will be valuable to our review of procurement evaluation procedures. His analysis of visual evidence and technical specifications demonstrates the kind of rigorous methodology we need in equipment assessment. The session began with Pentagon officials presenting the current procurement evaluation process, a complex system of performance metrics, field testing protocols, and comparative analysis. Robert listened carefully, noting the gap between the formal procedures described and the actual outcomes documented in the Washington Post investigation. When invited to contribute, Robert presented his analysis with professional precision. The current system contains significant vulnerabilities to narrative manipulation. Performance data passes through multiple interpretation layers before reaching decision makers, creating opportunities for emphasis adjustment without technical falsification. He illustrated his point using the Bradley example, showing how selective emphasis of certain performance aspects could create misleading overall impressions without technically misrepresenting any specific data point. This isn't just about one vehicle or one contract. The pattern extends across multiple systems. Narratives about equipment performance are being shaped to influence procurement decisions worth billions of dollars, regardless of actual battlefield effectiveness. The financial connections Sarah had uncovered proved particularly compelling, demonstrating concrete linkages between narrative sources and financial beneficiaries. Several committee members who had seemed skeptical initially became more engaged as the financial evidence accumulated. Senator Williams, whose initial hostility had been evident in the public hearing, attempted to shift focus back to classification concerns. Captain Mitchell, regardless of your intentions, sharing detailed technical assessments of military equipment creates potential security vulnerabilities. Robert addressed the concern directly. Senator, all information in my analysis comes from publicly available sources, technical manuals, manufacturer specifications, and visual evidence. Our adversaries already have access to these information sources. The only parties being kept in the dark are American taxpayers and congressional oversight committees. The response earned approving nods from several committee members, including some who had previously aligned with defense industry positions. The financial evidence had shifted the dynamic, making industry alignment more politically problematic. As the session progressed, Robert observed a gradual but significant shift in the committee's focus from questioning his analysis to examining the procurement system vulnerabilities he had identified. The conversation moved toward potential reforms: enhanced independent verification, reduced conflicts of interest, and greater transparency in performance reporting. Senator Howard leveraged this momentum skillfully, guiding the discussion towards specific policy recommendations that could be implemented through the next Defense Authorization Act. The battlefield was shifting from investigation to reform, a significant tactical advance. When the session concluded after 3 hours, several committee members approached Robert privately, expressing appreciation for his technical insights and requesting continued consultation as reform proposals developed. The mission was expanding beyond his initial analysis into systemic improvement. Senator Howard's expression conveyed cautious optimism as they exited the secure room. "You've moved the needle significantly, Mitchell." Even procurement office representatives were acknowledging system vulnerabilities by the end. This could lead to meaningful reforms. If it improves equipment decisions for the troops, that's what matters. It will take time and face significant resistance. These procurement patterns have become entrenched over decades. But exposing them is the essential first step. As they parted ways, Robert received a secure text from Mike. Surveillance team pulled back completely, changed tactics, or reassigned. The sudden absence of surveillance triggered Robert's tactical caution. In combat operations, when an opponent disappeared from observed positions, it often signaled repositioning rather than withdrawal, potentially for more advantageous engagement. "Maintain vigilance could indicate escalation preparations," Robert replied. The secure transport returned him to the temporary apartment, where he immediately conducted a security assessment. Nothing appeared disturbed, but experience had taught him that absence of evidence wasn't evidence of absence. His secure phone rang. Doc Thompson. "Captain, 2 men visited my shop today, said they were from the Defense Criminal Investigative Service. Asked a lot of questions about your technical analysis and my contributions. Showed credentials, but something felt off." "What specifically?" "Their questions focused on whether you had access to classified Bradley performance data. Kept circling back to that point. Seemed more interested in establishing a classification violation than understanding the technical analysis. Classic misdirection. Focus on process violations to avoid addressing substance. That was my read too. I told them everything we used came from public technical documentation. They left unsatisfied." Robert thanked Doc for the update, adding this development to his tactical assessment. The opposition was pursuing multiple pressure points simultaneously: media, legal, surveillance, and now potential criminal investigation angles. The pattern suggested coordinated effort rather than independent responses. His encrypted email pinged with a message from Rebecca Chen containing a draft of tomorrow's Washington Post article. The piece detailed growing congressional interest in procurement reform following the closed committee session, with multiple senators now questioning the integrity of performance evaluation procedures. Most significantly, the article revealed that 2 major pension funds had announced reviews of their NGCS holdings, citing governance concerns related to the procurement manipulation allegations. Financial pressure was mounting alongside political scrutiny. Robert was preparing his response to Rebecca when his secure phone rang again. Sarah Miller. "Uncle Bob, something important has developed. An internal FBI memo is circulating about your case. It specifically instructs agents to focus on potential classification violations rather than investigating the financial connections we've identified." Political pressure to change the subject. Exactly. But here's the significant part. Several agents have quietly raised concerns about this directive, seeing it as inappropriate influence over investigative priorities. There's internal pushback developing. This represented a potential turning point. When institutional professionals began questioning directives that diverted from mission integrity, system correction became possible. "Be careful, Sarah. You're already on administrative leave. Some principles are worth the professional risk. Dad taught me that. So did you." After the call, Robert updated his evidence wall in the temporary apartment, adding these new developments to the expanding pattern. The opposition was deploying multiple countermeasures, but institutional integrity was beginning to assert itself against inappropriate influence. His secure phone pinging with an encrypted message from Thomas Warner. IG Office initiating formal review of procurement evaluation procedures based on evidence presented to committee. Official announcement tomorrow. Significant development. The Inspector General's involvement represented major battlefield progress. While congressional attention could fluctuate with political winds, IG investigations followed established protocols regardless of political pressure. As evening approached, Robert recorded a new video update for his YouTube channel, carefully framing his comments to maintain focus on technical and procedural issues rather than political dimensions. Recent developments suggest growing recognition of procurement evaluation vulnerabilities. My technical analysis of the Bradley footage was simply one example of broader patterns affecting multiple systems. The focus should remain on improving procurement integrity to ensure our troops have equipment decisions based on performance rather than perception management. The video accumulated tens of thousands of views within hours, with military and veteran communities particularly engaged. Comments reflected growing awareness of systematic issues beyond the specific Bradley example. Robert's secure phone rang once more. Senator Howard. Mitchell, I've just received word that Congressman Lewis has requested a Justice Department investigation into potential classified information handling violations related to your videos. It's clearly an attempt to create legal pressure and shift focus from the procurement issues. Standard counterinsurgency tactic, target the messenger when the message gains traction. Precisely, but it comes with real consequences. I'm working through channels to emphasize the public source nature of your analysis, but you should prepare for potential legal complications. After the call, Robert conducted a thorough review of all his public statements and videos, confirming that all information presented derived from public sources. The legal pressure was tactical rather than substantive, but required serious response nonetheless. He contacted a former JAG officer who had served in his unit, arranging for standby legal representation if needed. Battlefield preparation applied to legal confrontations as much as physical ones, anticipating opposition moves and establishing defensive positions before engagement. Night settled over the temporary apartment as Robert maintained his vigilance. The battle had expanded beyond his initial expectations, evolving from technical analysis of one video to exposure of systematic procurement manipulation affecting multiple weapon systems and billions in defense contracts. The opposition's escalating countermeasures surveillance, legal pressure, investigation threats confirmed the significance of what had been uncovered. These were not the responses to minor concerns, but the defensive actions of entrenched interests facing substantial challenge. Robert slept lightly, maintaining the combat veteran's ability to rest while preserving alertness. Morning would bring new developments, new challenges, and new opportunities to advance the mission. Dawn arrived with breaking news. The Inspector General's office had formally announced an investigation into procurement evaluation procedures and potential conflicts of interest affecting defense acquisition decisions. The scope encompassed multiple weapon systems and procurement programs, extending far beyond the original Bradley issue. Simultaneously, the Washington Post published its latest article detailing growing financial pressure on defense contractors implicated in the procurement manipulation patterns. NGCS stock had fallen an additional 8%, and major institutional investors were demanding board-level responses to the governance concerns. Robert's secure phone rang. Rebecca Chen. Captain, our sources indicate NGCS executives are in crisis mode. The financial pressure has exceeded their worst-case projections, with major investors threatening board changes if the situation isn't addressed immediately. How are they likely to respond? They're discussing a major announcement, possibly leadership changes and new procurement transparency measures. The market pressure is forcing reforms that political pressure alone might not have achieved. This development aligned with Robert's understanding of institutional behavior. Financial consequences often drove change more effectively than moral arguments or political pressure. When shareholder value became threatened, corporate behavior could shift rapidly. His encrypted email pinged with a message from Thomas Warner, DoD Procurement Office implementing immediate procedural changes. Independent technical verification requirements for all performance evaluations. Your committee testimony had direct impact. The battlefield momentum was shifting decisively. From initial resistance to growing acknowledgement to now actual policy changes, the progression had exceeded Robert's expectations. But experience had taught him that opponents were most dangerous when cornered. As if confirming this assessment, Mike called with concerning news. Captain, my security team reports unusual network activity targeting your communications. Sophisticated intrusion attempts consistent with professional opposition research operations, possibly attempting to access your source materials and communications. Have they succeeded? Negative. Our security protocols are holding, but the attempt indicates escalation to cyber methods beyond physical surveillance. Robert instructed his team to implement enhanced digital security measures while continuing their supporting operations. The opposition was deploying increasingly sophisticated countermeasures, confirming both the effectiveness of his campaign and the significance of what was at stake. His secure phone rang again. An unknown number, Robert answered cautiously. Mitchell. Captain Mitchell, we haven't met. My name is David Harrington, Director of Strategic Operations at NGCS. The voice was measured, professional, conveying authority without aggression. I believe it's time we spoke directly. Robert maintained tactical discipline, revealing nothing in his response. What would you like to discuss, Ms. Harrington? The situation that has developed around procurement evaluation procedures. It appears we have different perspectives on equipment performance assessment that might benefit from direct communication. I'm listening. NGCS values equipment performance as highly as you do, Captain. Our difference lies in assessment methodologies and communication approaches. Perhaps we could find common ground that serves both defense industry viability and procurement integrity. Robert recognized the outreach for what it was, a negotiation attempt, as battlefield momentum shifted. My interest is ensuring procurement decisions serve our troops through accurate performance assessment. That's non-negotiable, as it should be. But there are multiple ways to achieve that objective, some more disruptive to national security infrastructure than others. I'm proposing a constructive dialogue about reform approaches. I'm open to dialogue about improving procurement integrity, but my technical analysis stands on its merits. They arranged a meeting for the following day at a neutral location, a private conference room at the Army-Navy Club in Washington. The venue choice was significant, a space where military tradition and values provided context for discussions affecting defense systems. After the call, Robert contacted Senator Howard, informing him of this development. The senator's response was measured. They're seeking controlled damage now that reform momentum is built. This represents progress, but maintain caution. Corporate survival instincts are powerful motivators. Understood, I'll listen to their position, but procurement integrity remains the non-negotiable objective. Throughout the day, Robert monitored continuing developments. The Inspector General investigation was proceeding with unusual public transparency, suggesting confidence in the evidence base. Multiple defense committees were now examining procurement evaluation procedures, with several proposing enhanced independent verification requirements. Most significantly, military forums were filled with service members sharing their own experiences with equipment performance reporting disparities. The conversation had expanded beyond official channels into the broader military community, creating grassroots pressure for reform. His secure phone rang again. Sarah Miller. Uncle Bob, important update. My administrative leave has been rescinded. The official explanation cites procedural review completion, but my supervisor indicated there was significant internal pushback against perceived political pressure on Bureau operations. Institutional integrity reasserting itself. Exactly. And I've been quietly encouraged to continue my financial analysis work as part of a new procurement integrity task force. Things are shifting. This development further confirmed the changing battlefield dynamics. When institutions began protecting their professional integrity against inappropriate influence, systemic correction became possible. By evening, Robert had prepared thoroughly for the next day's meeting with NGCS's Harrington. He organized his technical evidence, financial connection documentation, and procurement reform proposals into a comprehensive package. The approach would be professional and solutions-oriented, focused on systemic improvement rather than corporate antagonism. His secure phone rang once more. Doc Thompson, Captain thought you should know. Those DCIS agents returned today with a senior supervisor. Their tone was completely different, apologetic about the previous visit, and clarifying that there were no classification concerns with your technical analysis. Seemed like someone higher up had redirected their approach. Institutional course correction happening across multiple fronts. Sure looks that way. The supervisor even mentioned new procurement review procedures being implemented. Said they'd be reaching out to technical experts like us for consultation on independent verification protocols. After updating his team on these developments, Robert spent the evening reviewing military procurement history, identifying previous reform efforts and their outcomes. The pattern was consistent initial resistance, followed by minimal compliance, followed by gradual regression to problematic practices. Sustainable reform would require structural changes to incentive systems, not just procedural adjustments. Morning brought news that NGCS had announced a comprehensive procurement transparency initiative ahead of the scheduled meeting. The corporate statement emphasized commitment to performance-based evaluation and enhanced independent verification, suggesting preparation for concession rather than confrontation. The Army-Navy Club presented an environment steeped in military tradition, its walls adorned with artifacts of American combat history spanning centuries. Robert arrived early, as was his habit, selecting a position with optimal situational awareness within the private conference room. David Harrington arrived precisely on time, accompanied by two NGCS executives introduced as their technical director and general counsel. All three wore the conservative business attire of defense industry leadership, projecting corporate professionalism. Captain Mitchell, thank you for agreeing to meet. Harrington's handshake was firm, his expression conveying serious purpose without hostility. Your technical analysis has stimulated important conversations about procurement evaluation procedures. That was its purpose, Mr. Harrington, ensuring equipment performance is accurately represented in procurement decisions. They settled into the conference room's leather chairs, the corporate team on one side, Robert alone on the other. The imbalance didn't concern him. He had faced worse odds in combat situations. NGCS has announced our Procurement Transparency Initiative this morning, Harrington began. We're implementing enhanced independent verification protocols for all performance testing and creating a technical oversight committee that includes retired military personnel with relevant field experience. That represents positive progress, but sustainable reform requires structural changes to incentive systems, not just procedural adjustments. Harrington nodded, seeming to appreciate the direct approach. We recognize that, which is why we're also revising our executive compensation structures to link bonuses directly to verified field performance rather than contract acquisition metrics. The meeting continued for nearly 2 hours, discussing specific reform measures, verification protocols, and implementation timelines. Robert maintained his focus on substantive improvements rather than corporate penalties, emphasizing that his objective had always been procurement system integrity, not corporate antagonism. The troops depending on this equipment don't care about corporate politics or procurement bureaucracy, he stated plainly. They care about having systems that perform as represented when their lives depend on them. That's the standard that matters. By meeting's end, they had reached substantive agreement on key reform principles: enhanced independent verification, compensation structures aligned with field performance, and transparent reporting of test results, including limitation scenarios. As they prepared to depart, Harrington made a final comment. Your analysis of the Bradley footage was technically correct, Captain. The vehicle remained in place due to damage that prevented conventional recovery. That fact became lost in corporate defense mechanisms that were ultimately counterproductive for everyone involved. The acknowledgement represented significant validation, though Robert had never doubted his technical assessment. More importantly, it signaled genuine reform intent rather than mere public relations management. Technical truth matters in military equipment. Lives depend on it. A principle we're recommitting to, Captain. Sometimes institutions need recalibration to their core purpose. Your analysis provided that catalyst, uncomfortable as the process has been. After the meeting, Robert contacted Senator Howard, updating him on the NGCS commitments and reform measures. The senator was cautiously optimistic. Corporate conversion under pressure isn't always sustainable, Mitchell, but the market forces and reputational factors at play give these commitments more credibility than typical damage control. We'll build these principles into the next Defense Authorization Act to ensure they're structurally reinforced. Throughout the day, Robert monitored continuing developments. The Inspector General investigation had expanded to examine procurement evaluation procedures across multiple defense programs. Congressional committees were drafting enhanced oversight provisions for the upcoming defense budget. Military forums continued active discussion of equipment performance reporting accuracy. His secure phone rang. Thomas Warner from the Inspector General's office. Mitchell, thought you should know. The classification investigation thread has been officially closed. The DOJ review found all your technical analysis was based on publicly available information, as you maintained throughout. No further action will be taken. Appreciated, Warner, though it was always a distraction tactic rather than a substantive concern. Exactly, but now it's officially cleared, removing that pressure point from your situation. By evening, Robert had begun transitioning from his temporary secure location back to his home. Mike's security team had confirmed the surveillance had been completely withdrawn, with no unusual activity observed for 48 hours. The opposition had shifted from pressure tactics to negotiated reform, a significant battlefield development. As he settled back into his home studio, Robert recorded a new video for his channel, updating his audience on the procurement reform developments and the technical validation of his Bradley analysis. The focus was never about one video or one company, but about ensuring procurement decisions serve our troops through accurate performance assessment. The reforms now being implemented across multiple fronts represent progress toward that essential objective. The response was immediate and substantial. Military and veteran communities expressed strong support, with many sharing their own experiences with equipment performance disparities. Technical experts contributed additional verification of his analytical approaches. Congressional staffers reached out regarding consultation on procurement oversight provisions. His doorbell rang, an increasingly frequent occurrence in recent weeks. Robert checked his security camera before opening the door. Rebecca Chen stood on his porch, holding a newspaper. "Thought you might want to see the front page, Captain." The Washington Post headline read, "Defense Procurement Overhaul. Pentagon Implements Sweeping Reforms Following Equipment Reporting Investigation." Your technical analysis started something significant, Captain. Multiple defense contractors are now implementing transparency initiatives. Congressional oversight is intensifying. DoD procurement procedures are being restructured. This goes well beyond the original Bradley video. That was always the objective: systemic improvement, not isolated correction. Rebecca smiled slightly. Most people would take more credit for catalyzing major defense procurement reforms. You make it sound like routine mission execution. Some missions extend beyond their initial parameters. The objective remains the same: ensuring the troops have equipment decisions based on performance rather than politics or profit. After she departed, Robert surveyed his home office. The evidence wall that had expanded from a single video analysis to documentation of systematic procurement manipulation now being addressed through multiple reform initiatives. His Bronze Star caught the afternoon light, a reminder of battlefield service that had evolved but never truly ended. Different terrain, different tactics, but the same fundamental mission: protecting those who serve through disciplined execution of necessary tasks, regardless of opposition. His phone rang. Sarah Miller. "Just wanted to say I'm proud to know you, Uncle Bob. Dad would have been too. What you started has turned into something important for people who may never know your name, but will benefit from your courage." "Just doing what needed doing, Sarah, like your father did." That evening, Robert sat on his porch watching the American flag move gently in the breeze. The battle wasn't over. Institutional reforms faced sustainability challenges. Corporate commitments required ongoing verification. Political attention would eventually shift to other priorities. But fundamental progress had been achieved. Procurement evaluation procedures were being restructured with enhanced independent verification. Compensation incentives were being realigned with field performance rather than contract acquisition. Oversight mechanisms were being strengthened at multiple levels. Most importantly, the conversation had shifted from denial to acknowledgement to reform, a progression that created possibility for lasting improvement. Robert Mitchell had commanded tanks through desert warfare, urban combat, and counterinsurgency operations. Now he had led a different kind of campaign through information space, congressional hearings, and procurement systems with the same disciplined focus on mission objectives. Some wars continued beyond formal battlefields, fought in procurement offices and committee rooms rather than desert terrain or urban streets. But the stakes remained equally significant: equipment decisions that would carry young Americans into harm's way, their lives depending on performance rather than perception. As darkness settled over his quiet neighborhood, Robert reflected on the meaning of service that extended beyond formal uniform wear. The mission evolved but never truly ended for those who understood the responsibility carried forward from battlefield command. He would continue his YouTube channel, applying technical expertise to equipment analysis with the same disciplined focus on accuracy and performance assessment. The platform had proven more consequential than he had initially imagined, creating accountability that formal systems sometimes lacked. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new videos to record, new technical systems to analyze. But tonight he could acknowledge progress in the extended mission he had carried forward from his tank commander days. The flag moved gently in the evening breeze, the stars and stripes representing principles worth defending across changing battlefields and through evolving challenges. Robert Mitchell had never stopped serving those principles, had never abandoned the responsibility that came with command experience. Some battles were fought with depleted uranium rounds and armored formations, others with technical analysis and procurement reform initiatives. But the ultimate objective remained unchanged, protecting those who served through unwavering commitment to necessary truths, regardless of opposition or personal cost. The mission continued, as it always would for those who understood that duty extended beyond uniform retirement, that leadership responsibilities outlasted formal command positions, that the obligation to protect troops transcended battlefield parameters. Steel faith indeed not just in armored vehicles, but in the principles that made them worth defending across generations and through evolving challenges. Captain Robert Mitchell, tank commander and truth defender, settled into his porch chair, surveying the peaceful neighborhood with the quiet satisfaction of a soldier who had once again completed a necessary mission against significant opposition. The battlefield changed, the mission endured.